And I'm not so scared of AI because it's coming. It's like being scared of electricity. But I'm scared of not understanding the implications or putting in place enough guardrails. So I'm scared of people using AI. I'm always scared of people.
Right.
People are the problem almost all the time. Hi.
Hi, good to see you again.
Thank you. Oh, where's Kim?
So as many of you may have seen yesterday, Kara helped lead the interview with Kim Kardashian yesterday, so she's already been on stage, but we're grateful to have you back to talk a bit more about yourself with your amazing career that you've had.
Thank you.
So, Kara, the last time you and I chatted a couple years ago here at the OMR Festival, that was right when Elon had announced his intention to acquire Twitter, now X. At that point, you thought it was a horrible idea, so...
I thought it was a good idea. Yeah. Well, I thought anybody buying Twitter was a good idea. It was a really bad business.
Yeah.
It was declining. It had never been able to reach its potential. The stock had stayed in the same place as when it went public. I think it was down from that. The business was just not good, and it needed better technical innovation. So he fit all those bills.
Yeah.
And he had a lot of money. So he needed money.
How do you think it's? How do you think he's done then?
Badly.
Yeah.
It's smaller. It's more toxic. It's less of a relevant business. It's a propaganda vehicle. It's flooded with toxicity and bad advertising and bad intentions, and that's including on the behalf of its owner.
Yeah, and so you don't fully buy into his vision he has of...
It's not a vision. There's no vision. The vision is a very troubled person is taking out all his traumas on the rest of the world via tweeting. So he should seek therapy.
So just backing up a bit, I'm not sure if our audience is as familiar with your background. In your memoir, it was really interesting to learn that when you were in college, you actually studied
propaganda,
the Nazi propaganda and Holocaust studies. A pretty unusual thing for someone in their early 20s to
Yes, I'm a happy person. It was important. I was interested in propaganda of all kinds, but obviously, and I don't want to say good propaganda, but propaganda has been used to excite populations in war, and typically in war, in the U.S. it was like savings bonds or whatever it happened to be. But they had used propaganda using radio and other things and posters and things like that, and I had studied it in China. In communist China and across the globe, the uses of propaganda to sway populations. And I was interested in communications, whether it was the telegraph, the Gutenberg Bible, radio, television. Excuse me, John F. Kennedy Jr. used television very effectively to sell himself over to Richard Nixon. So it was always really interesting to me how easy it was to change people's opinions, and including things like, there was a great movie, which I think really inspired me, called The Celluloid Closet, about gay people. And it showed all the depictions of gay people in media, especially movies and television over the years. And you understood why there was so much hatred, right? Because of the depictions. And so you could easily shift that into realistic depictions that were not so manipulative. So I was really interested in it, and obviously, Goebbels and other Nazi figures used the media quite effectively. I hate to say effectively, but that's what it was. And so I was always interested in that. And when I saw the internet, I thought, oh dear, what a place for propaganda to thrive and flourish. So I saw it right away.
Yeah, and definitely we have an important election happening in the U.S. this year.
Again. Every election in the U.S. seems important.
The same two people.
Yeah. It's also a deja vu of a choice we don't want to make. But, sometimes they're like, oh, I can't believe we have this choice. Well, it's the American voters' fault.
Yep.
It's not anybody else. We're always like, how did this happen? And I was like, you voted for them. You know, in a lot of ways, the problem is America is unable to move on from old tropes.
Yeah.
And the way the system is, new voices don't get to come. We'd be much better off with the many choice voting where people are stacked. There's all kinds of new voting systems that would yield a much better legislature and everything else. It's called ranked choice voting.
Right.
And now we have this polarizing situation where you have very red states and very blue states, and you can't be a candidate that has any kind of nuance. So when someone like Liz Cheney is considered like rogue, and she's very conservative, trust me, I've spent a lot of time with her,
Right.
It's ridiculous. She's not. She's quite a conservative. And so she's been shoved out, or Paul Ryan, or very conservative people have been shoved out of the Republican Party because they don't want to be a cult member of the Trump group.
Well, that it also kind of relates to this topic of propaganda, that if you say it enough times, it's true.
Yeah, that's a Trump thing.
What do you see, what should social media networks be doing in preparation for the election when...
Well, they're doing nothing. They've sort of backed away. They used to try it. But the issue is they try very hard to not spend money on things that matter because it doesn't help the bottom line. And the first line of the book is, so it was capitalism after all. And one of the things is they've got the most important communication system in the history of the world, and they don't have any responsibility for it. So it's as if they're spewing toxic waste out into the public and are saying, I don't know what happened, because what they do, and I've had lots of interviews with people like Mark Zuckerberg where I argued with him, especially about, this was 5 years ago, about anti-Semitic stuff on the platform. And I said, this is going downstream, this has some very terrible effects. And he got in trouble for saying this at the time, but he was letting Holocaust deniers run rampant all over the system. And I said, you need to cut them off, they're liars. And he said he didn't know if they mean to lie. And I was like, that's kind of the definition of a Holocaust denier, is they lie. And you have to have some responsibility for what's on your platform. And it took him 2.5 years to then make that same decision. And it was 2.5 years of incredible anti-Semitism that's getting pumped into the American body politic. Well, and it's already a problem, by the way. It wasn't not a problem before, but when you continue to stress that kind of stuff, it doesn't even have to be any kind of thing like that, whether it's, you know, all kinds of falsehoods. It creates a confusing situation for everybody. They don't know where to look.
Yeah, there seems to be, particularly with the new TikTok legislation in the US, there seems to be a real tension between, is this a media platform is this a social, you know,
no, but it is a media platform. I mean, what is TikTok but a broadcast network?
Yeah.
They're not allowed to buy CBS, but they're allowed to do this without any kind of, I mean, we have rules around, excuse me, I'm sorry, I have a cold, foreign adversaries. But it should be broader than that. That piece of legislation is problematic. TikTok yesterday just filed a lawsuit, which they should. But it should have covered all of them, because there's no legislation covering the rest of them. Why do we pick out this? I mean, there's a reason to pick out TikTok for foreign adversary reasons, but it should be a broader law, a privacy law, which you have here in Europe, but we do not have in the US in 30 years of inventing the modern social media company. They're all US companies. We have no privacy laws. We have no updated antitrust laws, no transparency laws, no markets laws. It's just, it's really something to see. Yeah. And you guys get the downstream effects too. As much as you may pass laws, it doesn't matter. I don't mean to say you don't matter, but it has to be US-based legislation.
Yeah, yeah. Related to legislation and government involvement in the tech industry, in your book you called Margaret Vestager the defender of all consumers.
Yeah, she is. She's about, I mean, there's very few. I mean, not everybody likes everything they do. You have much more strict laws around privacy. We're a little looser. That's fine. You know, that's not the issue. It's that she's the only one that's managed to pass any kind of laws that have any teeth in them. You know, the rest of it is like a parking ticket to these companies. And so, you know, here she is very, you know, she's a funny person. She's an interesting and unusual person, but here she is just going away, just making her laws. And they're actually, you know, there are a lot of stuff we could base them, a lot of stuff in the US, and we might change some things. There's, you know, we have First Amendment issues that we have to really pay attention to in the US, but there's all kinds of stuff. This is a business thing. It's not what happens is, especially the right wing, but when it suits them, they only do it when it suits them. They pull out the First Amendment like it's a cudgel and yell free speech when they never read the amendment. And I'm always like, you know, it's the first, it's short, it doesn't say what you're saying. It talks about the government and doesn't talk about companies or people. And so I really admire what she's done. I just don't think it has as much impact as, it's not a US law. It would matter more if the Congress, our Congress is so pathetic now. It's a really,
Yeah.
I mean, they haven't passed, they're down, they passed hundreds of laws in past years, and now I think it was like 45 or something. They just aren't doing their job. And then you have Marjorie Taylor Greene running all over the map, acting like a lunatic.
They're kind of in a standstill with the current political situation. Although California will often
That's
make
correct.
the first move, and
California
then that
does,
the
but
rest
again, you have competing laws in California and Minnesota. I mean,
Yeah.
it's called the United States of America, not California makes the rules for.
Yeah.
And they push back. The companies right now, the wife of the governor of California, Gavin Newsom, was pushing some of this legislation, was part of the group that was trying, and now that she's being sued by all the technology companies because they have unlimited funds. They're trillion-dollar they're nation states.
Yeah.
They are nation states.
So a bit of a kind of funny piece from your book was you've of course spoken with kind of all the tech greats from Steve Jobs all the way through to Zuckerberg. But in your book you gave a prick to productivity ratio to each of those people that you've interacted with. Maybe you can explain a bit more.
Yeah, I assume you all know what a prick is, do you? For Germans, it's
applause
penis.
if you know what a
It's
a colloquial term for someone who's maybe kind of a jerk, not the nicest.
It means a penis in a not waste way. So, but it's not. I guess it's the. I'm trying to think about it. Anyway, it's not a nice term.
Yeah.
And so it's someone who's kind of a jerk, and but it's a particular kind of jerk. And so I rank them on how much of a jerk they are versus what they contributed. And so it was just my little data point. I made it up. And you know, some people could act in certain arrogant or rude ways, but their productivity was off the charts. Steve Jobs is a good example. But compared to some of the today people, Steve Jobs looks like a teddy bear.
Like an angel.
You know, he misparked his car and yelled every now and then. I would love to have that back.
Yeah, so which came first, the productivity or the...
Prick first, and then productivity. But, I mean, you know, you can't deny how much productivity Steve Jobs had for all of us. We're all affected by his leadership in the tech industry. But he's one of my favorite people I covered.
So we're getting a bit short on time, but it wouldn't be a full interview if we didn't touch briefly upon AI. You've called it Pandora's box, you know, both opening up a lot of ethical issues, but also a lot of opportunity.
Yeah.
So, you know, what do we need to be doing to make sure that it's creating more good than bad? Is that involving legislation or, you know, just the company?
Well, you know, first it's a global issue. You know, very much like nuclear or cloning or certain war behaviors, and there are all war implications with AI. We should have global agreements on what we should develop. It's not a country-by-country thing. It cannot be. And let's leave China out of it. They're going to do their own internet, no matter how you slice it. But even they are starting to realize there's certain things that need to be cooperated on. And so the question is, like, if we could make standards around, you know, killer armies of drones, maybe not. And people are going to be rogues and do that. But to make it for governments to say we're not going to be developing that or whatever, we could do that, or it cannot be used for nefarious purposes, et cetera. And then once we have a global framework in place, development will happen. But the problem that's happening now is there's no legislation on the regular internet, or what's considered the regular internet, and people are moving here with only a vague idea of what's about to happen. We're in another Cambrian explosion of technology that is going to change everything. And I don't often say that, but the implications are enormous. And companies like Microsoft and Meta and Google, Alphabet, are spending trillions of dollars, trillions. Mm-hmm. Governments are not very involved. It used to be, the government invented the internet, the US government did. So we have, again, these big companies making decisions for the rest of us without any oversight, accountability, unlimited funds, and some of them are crazy, right? Some of them are really not people you want to make decisions based and sort of have lost the narrative. And so what I worry about is the government doesn't, and I'm not a regulatory person, I'm a business person, I don't love a lot of rules either, but at some level we have rules on pharmaceuticals and we have rules on nuclear war and nuclear issues. We have rules around a lot of very dangerous things, and I'm not so scared of AI because it's coming. It's like being scared of electricity, but I'm scared of not understanding the implications or putting in place enough guardrails. So I'm scared of people using AI. I'm always scared of people. Right. People are the problem almost all the time.
It's hard to control people.
Yeah.
So I'm cognizant that we need to wrap up. Just wanted to get your perspective. In the book, you talked a little bit about, you're getting a bit uncomfortable with your insider status.
I don't know if I'm an insider.
Well, you said things are going to have to start getting a little tougher.
Yeah.
Soon I'm going to screw you.
Oh, well, I wasn't. No, I just think that these are unaccountable people with enormous power over people. And they're the richest people in the history of the world, running the richest companies. And one of the things I had, I'll end on a thing I had with the Google people a long time ago when they were trying to take over all of search, which you all know, you guys had some rules against that here, which is the correct thing to do. And they wanted to take over almost 98% of search. And I thought that was too much, and I called them, we pulled back Microsoft when they were doing that earlier. And I said, I wrote a line that said, at least Microsoft knew they were thugs. And this is thuggish behavior. And one of the founders called me and he said, you know us, we're really nice people. You know we're not thugs. And I said, I'm not really talking about you. And I quoted Yeats, with the poem Slouching Towards Bethlehem, about, the very dystopian poem. And I said, some rough beast is slouching towards Bethlehem, waiting to be born. And of course they hadn't read poetry, so that was a waste of my time. And I said, the beast is coming. And they're like, what beast? I'm like, forget it. It's a metaphor, and I'm not even going to explain what a metaphor is to you. But I said, I'm not concerned about you. I'm concerned about bad people, and bad people are coming. They always, in every turn in history, bad people show up and abuse powerful technologies. There's not been one time in our history, and this is really bad. And I don't care, sure, you're nice people, they're not that nice, but I'm worried about something else which you have no sense of, which is the inevitability of using powerful tools to subjugate people. And that will happen, I'm certain. That's the only certainty I have. And so that's my concern with AI, is the things that it could manipulate in ways that we have not even begun to imagine. And I'm not a doomsayer of AI. I think it could also create cancer, not cure it, create non-lethal cancer, figure out energy systems, figure out why do we have plastic? Maybe there's another thing it could make. The great amount of data around, there are answers everywhere, like treasure. And this could help us pull it out for the benefit of humanity. But instead, it's going to create a situation where we're going to have a permanent overclass of billionaires and trillionaires that need their next dirty dollar. and not for the benefit of all of humanity. And
Yeah.
so that's what I would prefer.
Yeah, you call yourself an optimistic pessimist.
Pessimist. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Kara Swisher.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks, Kara.
Thank you.